After an hour of talking, Nancy hung up the phone and smiled at Amanda, not realizing the storm brewing inside her friend. Amanda, with a strained smile, excused herself from the conversation, saying she needed to get something from another room. But Nancy wasn't fooled. She could feel that something was wrong, but she didn't press Amanda for answers. As Amanda left the room, she quickly snatched up Nancy's phone, swiftly copying Nduka's contact details. It was a decision that would haunt her forever. The days following Amanda's betrayal were filled with tension, but to the outside world, everything appeared normal. Amanda continued to act as if nothing had changed, yet her heart was consumed by a growing bitterness. Every time Nancy mentioned Nduka's name, every time she smiled at her phone when he called, Amanda's jealousy gnawed at her insides. Nancy, however, remained blissfully unaware of Amanda's dark feelings. She continued her friendship with Amanda, inviting her over for tea and long chats, just as they had done for years. But there was an increasing discomfort in the air, a heaviness that Nancy couldn't place, though she felt it. One morning, Nancy received an unexpected call from Nduka. Her heart raced as she picked up the phone, hearing the familiar deep voice on the other end. He was coming back to the town for a visit, and he wanted to see her. He told her that he had been thinking about her every day since they had last spoken, and he wanted to take her out for dinner to show her how much he cared. Nancy, overjoyed, felt like she was floating. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Nduka, the man who had captured her heart with his kindness and admiration, was coming to see her. She couldn't wait to share the news with Amanda, her best friend, the one who had been there for her through everything. But when she called Amanda to tell her the news, she was met with an unexpected coldness. Amanda answered the phone with an unenthusiastic hello, and there was an odd silence. Nancy, too excited to notice, quickly began sharing the news about her upcoming date with Nduka. "Guess what, Amanda?" Nancy said, her voice filled with excitement. "Nduka is coming back, and he wants to take me out for dinner. I think he's going to propose, Amanda." At first, Amanda feigned excitement. "Oh, that's great, Nancy. I'm so happy for you," she said with a forced cheerfulness. But deep inside, Amanda's emotions were anything but happy. Why her? The thought kept swirling in Amanda's mind like a whirlwind. Why does she always get everything? Why does she get the man? After the phone call, Amanda's anger erupted like a volcano. She paced around the house, muttering to herself. She couldn't stand it anymore. She couldn't stand the idea of Nancy getting everything she wanted, Nduka's love, admiration, and attention. Amanda felt desperate, as if she was losing a battle she had to win. In that moment, she decided there was only one way to get what she wanted. That night, Amanda met with her mother. They sat in the living room, the dim light from the lantern casting long shadows across their faces. Amanda's mother had always supported her, no matter what. And now, it was time to make sure Nduka was hers. "Amanda, you must understand something," her mother said softly, her voice low and serious. "Nduka is a catch. If Nancy gets him, you'll lose him forever. But if you want him, you must do whatever it takes. And I will help you." Amanda listened intently, her heart beating faster with every word her mother spoke. Her mother had always been a woman of power and influence, even if it came from dark places. She had always kept the family's secrets hidden, and Amanda was her greatest ally. "You need to get Nancy out of the way," her mother continued. "You can't let her ruin everything. You've worked too hard to let this slip through your fingers. Amanda's eyes narrowed with determination. She had already stolen Nduka's contact from Nancy's phone. Now, she needed to find a way to make sure Nancy was no longer a threat. Together, they began to hatch a plan, a dangerous, irreversible plan that would change everything. The opportunity came sooner than Amanda had anticipated. Nancy, as she always did, came to Amanda's house to borrow a pair of shoes for the upcoming dinner date with Nduka. Nancy was thrilled about the prospect of spending time with him. She felt like her dreams were finally coming true. When Nancy arrived at Amanda's house, she was radiant, her smile lighting up the room. She greeted Amanda with a warm hug, unaware of the dark plans that were brewing in the background. "Amanda, do you think I can borrow those red heels? I want to look perfect for Nduka tomorrow night," Nancy asked, her eyes shining with excitement. Amanda hesitated for a moment. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. She smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach her eyes, and nodded. "Of course, Nancy. You can have them," Amanda said. "But just remember to return them when you're done. You know I like to keep my things neat." But Amanda had something planned for those shoes. As soon as Nancy left, Amanda hurriedly went to her mother's room, where she had hidden the small bottle of castor oil. Her mother had told her to apply it to the shoes, and Nancy would never be the same again. It would break Nduka's affection for her. Amanda's hands trembled as she carefully applied the oil to the shoes. Before bringing it out to give to Nancy, she knew there was no going back. Once Nancy wore them, everything would change. Nancy didn't suspect anything. She took the shoes from Amanda's closet, thinking nothing of it, and thanked her friend before heading home to get ready for her date. She had already begged her best friend Amanda to escort her to the venue, but she refused, bringing up different excuses. The following day, Nancy was busy preparing for her date. She put on the beautiful dress she had chosen, and as she slipped her feet into the red heels Amanda had lent her, she felt a strange chill run through her body. She shook it off, thinking it was nothing more than nerves. The excitement of the evening made her forget about the odd feeling. But as she walked to the meeting point where she and Nduka had planned to meet, something went terribly wrong. Her legs, which had once carried her so gracefully, began to feel strange. First, there was a slight discomfort, then a sharp pain. Nancy tried to ignore it, but the pain only grew worse. As she stood waiting for Nduka, she felt a sudden, overwhelming heat in her legs. Her knees buckled, and she fell to the ground, gasping for air. The pain was unbearable, and her legs began to swell, growing larger and larger by the second. Panic set in as she realized something was terribly wrong. At that moment, Nduka arrived, his eyes wide with shock as he rushed to her side. "Nancy! What's happening to you?" he exclaimed, lifting her gently into his arms and rushing her to the car. They rushed Nancy to the hospital, but the doctors were at a loss. No one could figure out what was causing the sudden swelling in her legs. The pain was excruciating, and Nancy could barely keep her eyes open from the constant discomfort. Nduka stayed by her side the entire time, his concern growing by the minute. He couldn't understand what was happening, but he refused to let Nancy go without a fight. He asked the doctors for any possible solutions, but they had no answers. Nancy's condition worsened, and soon the doctor suggested a drastic measure, amputation of both her legs before the infection spread further into her body. It was a heart-wrenching decision. Nduka, desperate to save her, refused. He believed there had to be another way. But Amanda, now secretly watching from the shadows, knew what she had done. She had thought she was rid of Nancy, but the reality of the curse's power had far exceeded her expectations. She had started to regret her actions, but it was too late. The consequences of her jealousy were unfolding, and there was no going back. The days in the hospital seemed to stretch on endlessly. Nancy's condition had worsened so much that her once strong and graceful legs had swollen to an unimaginable size. Every time Nduka looked at her, his heart ached. He refused to believe that there was no way to help her. He couldn't bear the thought of losing her, not after everything they had shared. He spent sleepless nights by her side, praying for a miracle, hoping against hope that something, anything, would change. But as the doctors continued their failed treatments, the situation grew more desperate. They could do nothing more for her. The infection had spread, and her legs continued to grow worse by the hour. Nancy could no longer move them, and the pain was unbearable. The doctors insisted that amputation was the only way to save her life, but Nduka refused to accept that fate. Every night, Nancy cried herself to sleep, her pain too much to bear. And during the day, her family, devastated by the sudden and drastic turn of events, remained at her side, praying for a miracle. Her parents had always been there for her, but this time, it seemed like they couldn't do anything to help. But as Nancy lay there, helpless and suffering, something unexpected happened. It was one evening, as the hospital room was filled with the sound of soft sobs and whispered prayers, that an unexpected figure entered the room. Father Elias, a kind-hearted priest from the local parish, had heard about Nancy's condition and came to offer his blessings. Father Elias was well known in the community for his compassionate heart and his deep faith in the power of prayer. When he saw Nancy, lying in her bed with swollen legs, he immediately knew that this was no ordinary illness. There was something dark at play here, something that went beyond the natural world. He approached Nancy's bedside with a gentle hand, asking everyone in the room to step back. His eyes shone with an intense, unwavering conviction. The moment Father Elias laid his hands on Nancy's legs, a powerful energy filled the room. It was as if the air itself was charged with an otherworldly force. Father Elias began to pray in a low, steady voice, his words flowing like a sacred incantation. He poured holy olive oil on Nancy's legs and sprinkled blessed water over her, murmuring prayers of healing and protection. Amanda, who had been lurking in the background, secretly watching from the hallway, felt an inexplicable unease. She couldn't help but be drawn into the room, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't anticipated that Father Elias would come, and she certainly hadn't expected that he would pray for Nancy in such a way. But as she watched him, a deep feeling of guilt began to creep into her heart. The weight of her actions, the curse, the jealousy, the betrayal, began to settle on her, crushing her inside. As Father Elias continued to pray, a sudden flash of lightning illuminated the room. The sound of thunder echoed through the hospital, but it wasn't the storm that shocked everyone. It was Amanda's mother, who was standing by the door, her eyes wide with fear. Amanda's mother collapsed to the ground, crying out in pain. The entire room fell silent as she writhed on the floor, clutching her chest. Her body trembled uncontrollably, and her eyes filled with terror. Father Elias stopped praying and rushed to her side, trying to hold her steady. "Help her, Father," Amanda cried, rushing toward her mother. But Father Elias didn't answer her. He simply stared at her mother with a look of realization on his face. And then, with a voice that echoed through the room, Amanda's mother began to confess. I did it. I helped Amanda. I took the oil to the witch. The curse. It's all my fault. The room went still. Everyone listened in stunned silence as Amanda's mother confessed her dark actions. She explained how she had gone to the witch in the Forbidden Mountain, how she had agreed to help Amanda with the curse, and how she had used dark magic to try to take away Nancy's happiness. I thought it would make things right. That Enduka would be Amanda's. But now look what has happened, she cried, her voice breaking as she confessed the full extent of her evil deeds. I never meant for it to go this far. Amanda stood frozen, her heart racing in her chest. She felt as if the ground had been ripped from beneath her feet. Her mother, her own flesh and blood, had been behind this all along. The curse that had caused Nancy's suffering, the curse that had nearly cost her life, had been planned and executed by the woman she trusted most. I'm sorry, Amanda whispered, her voice barely audible. But her apology felt hollow, a mere whisper in the midst of the devastation she had caused. Father Elias, sensing the gravity of the moment, looked at Amanda with sorrow in his eyes. You have done wrong, child. But there is still time for redemption. The path you choose now will determine your future. As Amanda stood in the room, watching her mother tremble and cry, Nancy's legs began to change. The swelling that had once been unbearable started to reduce. Slowly, but surely, her legs returned to their normal size. The pain that had tormented her for days began to fade, and for the first time in weeks, she felt relief. Enduka, who had been standing by Nancy's side, watched in disbelief as the swelling in her legs disappeared before his eyes. He couldn't believe it. Nancy's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. The curse that had nearly ruined her life was breaking, piece by piece. Father Elias, sensing the change, continued his prayers, his voice rising with power. As he finished his final prayer, a sudden silence fell over the room. The storm outside seemed to fade away, and for the first time in days, there was peace. Nancy slowly opened her eyes, and as she looked around, she saw Enduka's face filled with tears of joy. He hugged her tightly, whispering words of gratitude. You're going to be all right, Nancy. You're going to be okay. Tears streamed down Nancy's face as she realized that she had been given a second chance. A chance to live, to love, and to heal. But as much as she was filled with joy and relief, there was still a sadness that lingered in her heart. Amanda stood in the corner of the room, her heart heavy with guilt. She had caused this pain. She had let jealousy and anger cloud her judgment, and now, she had lost everything. Her friendship with Nancy was gone. The trust she had once shared with her mother was shattered. Father Elias turned to Amanda and her mother, his gaze sharp and stern. The consequences of your actions cannot be undone. But there is still time for you both to seek redemption. You must make amends for the harm you have caused. Amanda's mother, now trembling in fear, realized the full extent of her wrongdoing. I will do anything to make it right, she sobbed. Anything. Father Elias nodded solemnly. Then you must leave this place, repent, and seek forgiveness from the people you have wronged. Redemption is not easily earned, but it is possible. In the weeks that followed, Amanda and her mother were forced to leave the community. The shame of their actions was too great for them to stay. Amanda, once a proud and arrogant young woman, now found herself alone, exiled from the place she had once called home. She spent her days reflecting on her choices, wondering where it had all gone wrong. As for Nancy and Nduka, their relationship grew stronger. They built a life together, one filled with love and understanding. Though Nancy could never forget the betrayal from her best friend, she learned to forgive. Her heart had been healed, not just physically, but emotionally as well. And as for Amanda, her journey was only just beginning. The road to redemption was long, and the weight of her actions would follow her for the rest of her life. But perhaps, in time, she would find a way to atone for the pain she had caused. Thank you for watching this story. Kindly share your thoughts in the comment section, give this story a thumbs up, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. Thank you, and remain blessed.